And welcome back to Michigan Matters. We're talking to Oakland University's David Dulio about what else, a little politics. And David, how is Michigan going to factor into the presidential race, you think?
Michigan's going to be critical in November. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be central to each candidate's path toward an electoral college victory. And there's been no better evidence of that than the Democratic convention that just wrapped up. Michigan was all over the place in that convention. And I would expect to see the same thing when Republicans launch next on Monday.
As we say, their convention's kicking off tomorrow. So what is their mission going to be? Donald Trump's the incumbent. Everyone knows that. No surprise there. So what's going to be their mission of trying to get, what is the message, I guess?
Well, I think the goal is the same as the Democrats, right? Which is to keep their base energized, to keep Republicans energized, get them revved up, continue to get them revved up about the fall campaign, try to reach out to some independent voters, some middle of the road voters, those persuadable folks.
Having these virtual conventions, first time we've ever done this, had this. I think there were some fits and starts. The Democratic, we'll see what the Republicans do this time. How is this going to change politics and politicians, do you think?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. I think we won't know until 2024 when we have another nominating convention. And, you know, they might pick and choose some things that they were actually finding successful in 2020, and they might carry them over. We'll wait and see if some of the prepackaged video that allows them to get more people involved, that might be something that holds over.
The beauty of it, they are staying on time. There's no running over. Usually the conventions go over hours. That has not happened. Everybody's been many pre-taped and so forth here. But in terms of the incumbents with this virtual campaigning that's now taking place, and Zoom is a way to campaign, does this help incumbents more than someone who's new, whose name's not as known, trying to get their message out?
I think the COVID-19 election is really one that benefits incumbents for several reasons. And one is name recognition, as you mentioned, because challenger candidates, they have a harder time getting their name out there. And tied with that is sort of traditional ways of campaigning that are more difficult now. For instance, in a state house race or maybe even some congressional races, door to door is maybe a big no-no these days, where people might not be very receptive to folks coming to their door. I also think fundraising has had a big impact. COVID has had a big impact on candidate fundraising. They can't fundraise with events in the way that they maybe would like.
I also wanted to ask you about a couple races closer to home here. Oakland County Executive race is open, and David Coulter is the incumbent. He filled in for Brooks Patterson, who passed away, and he's running against Mike Cowell. How do you see that race going, considering that Brooks held that position for decades and he being a Republican?
Sure. I think that certainly, Oakland County has trended Democratic in the last few election cycles. Nobody can deny that with just the vote totals that have come out of Oakland County. I also think, we talked about incumbency. I think Dave Coulter has an advantage. He has been in the job for months, and he's got a record now to run on. And throughout the primary, at least, he talked about that record. He went to his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, how he interacted with it, touted his leadership, and I think that gives him a big advantage.
Also, another race that's red hot, Gary Peters, who's running for re-election as the incumbent senator. John James, who ran against Debbie Stabenow, came surprisingly close, a lot of people thought. How do you see that race going?
Nip and tuck. I think that John James had greater success in 2018 against Debbie Stabenow, as you mentioned. And maybe that built some momentum for him into 2020. He's raising a lot of money, and he's outraised Peters for several quarters in a row. I think that just spells for us here in Michigan, we're going to see a lot of TV ads from the James and Peters campaigns, in addition to those presidential spots.
And about 10 seconds here on November 3rd, we're hearing about integrity of election, mail-in, et cetera, et cetera. Will we have a winner, do you think, November 3rd?
Boy, your guess is as good as mine. I think that, one thing that is a positive out of that is there were some concerns about Michigan being able to count all the absentee ballots, even on primary day. And there did not seem to be any of those problems or delays statewide. Hopefully we have the same kind of result come November 3rd here in Michigan.
Much more to say, but unfortunately we're out of time here. I want to thank you so much for being here. It's going to be a fascinating 70 days ahead of us here, and we'll have you back to talk about it. Take good care and keep it right here. We're back with more Michigan Matters.